So in chess, one of the most difficult aspects is when to make a trade. You should only make trades if they're forced or if they're fantastic. And in this position, Levon Aronian correctly decided that now was the moment to take the queens off the board. He brought the white queen to the center, attacking the opponent's queen, and black had nothing better to do than capture. Actually, I think maybe Magnus, making the best of a bad situation, should have brought his knight back, because his black knight was out of the game for a lot longer. And after this trade, at least the black knight would be on a decent square jumping forward later on. But once the queen trade did happen on Levon Aronian's terms, after the queens did come off, we did see Magnus Carlsen make the final mistake. It's difficult already. White has these fantastic pawns in the middle of the board. That's why he went for the trade, because he has the long-term advantage. But Magnus Carlsen making this mistake, he brought his bishop away from the protection of these pawns. And after Levon Aronian created this fantastic pawn structure, here we did see Magnus Carlsen push this pawn forward and Aronian win one of these two pawns. Suddenly, both of these pawns are attacked at the same time. One of the pawns dropped off, and as we saw later on, Levon Aronian, once he won those pawns, that was game over. He guided the game smoothly and very safely to victory. Actually, the big mistake, I think, for Levon Aronian was to allow Magnus to take things into his territory, to turn it into an endgame. And it all happened at this moment. Here, black's bishop is under fire, black's bishop is under attack from the white queen, but he should have chosen a better square for this piece. He actually put it on the edge of the board. It's not clear what it's doing here. It's hitting thin air. There's no reason for it to control these squares. It's not teaming up with any other pieces either. So he could have chosen a better square. Instead, to run out of this attack, to escape from it, he could have brought his bishop maybe to this diagonal, eyeing up one of white's weak pawns. This pawn is going to be an eternal target for the bishop. Also, the rook behind it might be a target as well. He could even have kept his bishop on a different square. He should have brought it back to protect the black king. And now, if Magnus had followed the same plan with this queen trade, we would have seen the queens come off, but the white pawn in the middle of the board become a huge target for this bishop. So two options there for Levon Aronian to keep a very healthy position. Instead, let's just show what happened in the game, because he brought his bishop to the edge of the board, and now, after the queen stepped forward, it was inevitable. A queen trade had to happen if black wanted to run away. If he just moved out of this trade, then suddenly, bang, the pawn steps forward, and this bishop is trapped on the edge of the board, about to be taken by the white queen. So Levon Aronian, just one slip in the whole game. That was his only real mistake. But after that, he couldn't fight back. Magnus Carlsen had a slightly better endgame. He had the advantage and he never let it slip. Magnus converting it to a win. Pawn pushes, Ding, fantastic at combining all of his pieces, coordinating all of his pieces. And it wasn't just the pawn pushes to explode things open, to undermine white's king position, but it was the pieces that supported it behind. And look at these two knights, fantastic support. The rook, the bishop joining the action as well. And it started here, the checkmating attack, the final attack, which took a while, but it started in this position with a double check. Taking this pawn, giving check with the pawn and with the queen. And after this pawn was recaptured, the black bishop joined the fun, joined the party as well. This is a nasty check along the diagonal. White had to give away a piece just to block it. And after a couple more trades, we did see the end coming. After the king stepped back, running away from this check, the black queen joined the fun. And yes, white tried to cause some confusion with his queen. Artemiev trying to fight, trying to survive, but it wasn't enough. After the white queen gave check, the black king stepped up the board, and we saw this not change too much later on. Eventually, when the time was right, the black queen struck with a checkmate, and white's king was helpless. It got very dramatic. I think Magnus Carlsen, he assumed it would be easier than it actually was. He allowed the queen trade. He went into this rook and pawn endgame, which looked very promising for white, but actually it was a draw with correct play. Aronian, he did find this amazing idea earlier on of bringing his rook to this square from where it cuts off the white king. White's king unable to shift across to where the action is actually happening. The black rook doing a perfect job on this square. And it was this moment with which, when Aronian let the draw slip, he actually removed that cutoff of the white king. He brought his rook across, allowing white's king to join the action finally and head towards the black pawn. If he had found just pushing his pawn, maybe even the most natural move in the position, if he'd pushed his pawn forward, he would have held this game. He would have made a draw, because white's rook, as soon as it moves away to pick up this pawn, will drop the white's pawn, white's pride and joy. If white, however, instead of doing this, if white had promoted, forcing a king and pawn endgame, then after some trades, if we see a quick race here, black is just in time. White's king goes after the black pawn, black's king looks terrible, but it will run towards the center, and in this position, just in time, before white's king goes after the pawns, the black king is in time to cut it off. and we see the opposition, neither side can make progress, Aronian would have drawn this game.